Hey, welcome back to Prepping with Sarge. Today we are going to talk a little bit about how do I find so many wild edibles when I'm out on one of these hiking trails? How do I find so many medicinal plants? I've got a lot of information to share with you today. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I drop videos at least twice a week. I talk about topics related to preparedness, wilderness survival, sometimes financial survival and financial preparedness. I'd love to have you be part of the channel. If you are returning, please remember to drop a like at some point during the video, and let's get right to it. Stay with me now. All right, so welcome back. So I'm not going to do the big intro today and do shout outs and everything else. We're just going to get right into it. So if you haven't already seen so, I'm going to link in the description and in the end card the first lesson in this, like how do you get good at finding these wild edibles? So that was the abundance exists at the edges, right? So you can go check that out if you haven't already seen that. All right, so the first thing I want to clarify here is that there really is no app that I can recommend in good conscience. I'm not going to name any of the apps out there, but some of the more popular ones I can't in good conscience recommend because of two reasons. First reason is that one of the more popular ones has some really predatory billing, and I'm not going to name that. If you decide to go into the app store of your phone and check those things out, you can, kind of read the comments and make the decision for yourself. Second reason, and more importantly, is I have not found one that is really what I would consider accurate. So if I tell you, go ahead and use, Sarge's app for plant identification, and you go out and use it, and it falsely identifies a plant, then you could make a big mistake and eat something that's really bad for you. And especially when it comes to the mushrooms, we've talked about this before, that the mushrooms are more dangerous than the plant ID, and that there's a lot of toxic lookalikes that can basically kill you dead. Of the more popular apps out there, you can go on YouTube and see some of the tests of these, and people have tested, like take a picture of their carpet and it identifies it as an edible plant. So you can see the problem there. What I do recommend, if you really want to get into this, the best way to learn is to try to find a mentor, somebody who really knows your area and can teach you some of those things. If you can't find that, then the next best thing is to get some good books that are designated for your area. I have another video that's going to be coming out about it in the brain training series where I show you two of the books that I use, and I'm going to link in the description down here below some of the ones for various parts of the United States, and if I can find some stuff for Canada, some books too that you can go on Amazon and check out for yourself if you like to do this kind of thing. So really the best way is to you want to kind of start to pick 5 or 10 of the more common edibles in your area. And when you go out and about, know where to look, what time of year to look, and start seeing if you can find those, right? So you want to be able to identify them by sight, and taking into consideration some of the tips that we're going to talk about in this series, such as abundance exists at the edges. I'm going to teach you one of those other tips today to kind of get you a little bit further on that path, all right? Stay with me now. All right, so the next tip that I want you to memorize, so you've got abundance exists at the edges. The next tip that I want you to remember is look for the anomaly, okay? So if you've ever played the game Where's Waldo, and if you remember that game where they'd show the cartoonish guy with the red and white shirt, and you'd see a picture and there'd be thousands of people in the picture and you had to try to find Waldo. That's the idea here. I want you to think about as you're walking along on your hiking trails or even in your neighborhood, right? Because you can do this skill in urban settings and suburban settings. And in fact, I've got some videos that are coming along talking about that. I don't know if you can hear in the background, but unfortunately near my hiking trail, they've been doing some construction. So this is, the environment here is going to be changing, which is really sad for me. I'm going to have to find some new trails, but I'm scouting some new locations. All right, wow, ADD is off the hook there. Let's get back to the topic.
ADD is off the hook there.
Let's get back to the topic. So, all right, so I'm going to show you an example here. We're going to walk around. I'm going to put the film on like where I'm walking, right? You're going to see it from like my vision down to the ground level in a minute here. And I want you to spot the anomaly, okay? And and if you've been watching my videos on this stuff, some of the ones I've showed you before. I'm going to show you one of those right now, okay? So the idea here is you memorize some of the more common ones in your area and start to look for those. That's the anomaly that you're going to look for. So how did I learn this particular skill? Well, years ago I had a friend that I was working with who was very good at finding 4-leaf clovers. People think that 4-leaf clovers are rare. They're not. At least in most parts of the United States, they're not. They're uncommon. So think about that metaphor we talked about with Where's Waldo. When you're looking at a patch of clover, your eyes are going to see the 3 leaves, right? You're going to, because that's the most common. If you relax your eyes and instead of looking for the 3 leaves or seeing the forest for the trees, right? Instead of seeing the whole patch, just kind of scan it looking for the anomaly. And he taught me how to do this, and it takes some practice, but he was able to go out there within 15 minutes, he could find a 4-leaf clover. They're that common, okay? Or they're not common, but they're uncommon, okay? They're not rare. And so he taught me how to do this, and I didn't get as good as he did at it, but I started to be able to find a 4-leaf clover within an hour. Okay, he could find it in minutes, I could find it within an hour. And that's the idea here, is you're training your brain to look for the anomaly. Okay, now I'm gonna switch camera views here, and I'm gonna walk along this path, and I know there's an edible up here, so I'm using this as an example, but this is how I do it. I'm gonna walk along this path, and I want you to watch for the anomaly and just kind of get the idea of when that catches your eyesight, stop and look at it, okay? All right, did you see it? Did you see how there at the end, that's this little pattern here behind me? This little pattern here behind me emerged. It was something interesting. It was something that was different from what was at the footing up to that point. If you've watched my video on the partridge berry, that's what this is, right? And so the first time, this is the spot where I spotted it last time, so I knew I could come back here and show you this as an example. But the first time I found this, that's exactly how I did it. Was I was walking along looking for an anomaly, looking for something that's different from the pattern. And when it caught my eye, then I take a closer look, and then I start to think, is this one of the ones that I know before? Now I have to check that, right? And we're fortunate that we can go on the internet. So, my phone's working out here. I can just pull it right up and say, hey, is this partridge berry? Is it holly, whatever? You pick an example. This is partridge berry. And so I got confirmation, check it with another source, confirmation. Now, if you did want to use one of those apps and use it as one of your sources, I'm okay with that. And sometimes I do that as well. All I'm saying is a cautionary tale, don't use that as your only source. And then I went home and I checked it in my books. Absolutely. This is partridge berry. This is a wild edible, all right? You kind of see the idea? Now, for those of you who are paying attention in the background here, you might have spotted one of the other ones from one of my videos. There's also some dwarf palmetto here. Now, I'm not going to venture out into these woods here because I know for a fact there are copperheads. They're in hibernation right now, but I'm just not going to step on something and take a chance. So, but if I had to, if it was a survival situation, I know I've got dwarf palmettos out here. I can go out there and I can start looking for dwarf palmetto berries, which if you watched that video, that's a wild edible. Now I'm gonna show you an example of that one just so you kind of know how easy that one is to spot. All right, so see that greenery over my shoulder? That's dwarf palmetto. I've got a video up about that. So if I was desperate for edibles, I could venture out into there and start looking for those little black berries. You get the idea here? And that's a pretty easy one to spot. So the idea, what I want you to get in your mind here is, as you're learning this skill set, is memorize, start with 5 or 10 of the common ones in your area for this time of year that are accessible within areas that you have access to, okay? Start looking for those. When you've got that, expand out to 5. So we talked about, as an example, everybody knows, if I showed you a strawberry, everybody knows what a strawberry is. Would you have known what a dwarf palmetto berry is? No, because they don't sell them in the grocery store, right? How do you know? Because you learn it and you look at it and you memorize it. From now on, for the rest of my life, I know what a dwarf palmetto berry is, okay? That's the idea, all right? All right, and because you guys are such an awesome audience, I'm going to throw in a little bonus tip on this one here. Another little rule to kind of remember is where there's one, there's probably more. Okay, so if I find a patch of partridge berries out here in this little minor ecosystem, guess what? There's a pretty good chance that there's more of it, right? So I was walking along a little bit further up the path and just kind of keeping my eyes open, and I'm going to show you what I found. I'm going to turn the camera here in just a second. All right, hopefully you can hear me with the mic turned this way. I didn't bring my little mic out here with me today. So I'm walking along, right? And here's what I saw. Okay, that's the anomaly. See? Pattern of dead leaves, and there's something poking through. That's what caught my attention. Okay, so I took a closer look. Guess what we found? What's that? That's a partridge berry. What's that? That's a partridge berry. That's a partridge berry. So guess what? If we start clearing this back, we're going to find under here that there's a patch of partridge berries growing. There it is. See? All right. So where there's one, there's probably more. And actually, I know for a fact, because I've been out on this trail so many times, there's probably tons and tons of this out here. What I was looking for was the change in the pattern, right? So brown leaves, brown leaves, brown leaves, something's poking through. What is that? Take a closer look. And it's not always a wild edible, but often that anomaly is what catches my attention. And maybe once you've got that, right? Like once you've caught the anomaly, 50% of the time, maybe 40% of the time, it ends up being an edible, okay? That's roughly for this area. Now, your area of the country might be different, but for this area, that's been my experience. That doesn't mean that it's always going to taste good, but 40 or 50% of the time, I'm finding wild edibles. Look at how many partridge berries. If I start clearing this out, look at, there's another one under there. If I start clearing this out, I'm going to find a whole bunch of them. All right, watch for the anomaly. Now, this is where a gimbal would come in handy if I actually had a gimbal. Boom, right? Now that's pretty obvious because I got down to ground level, but I wanted to show you that's what you're looking for, right? Boom. Guess what that is, folks? That's partridge berry. And we are in the same trail, but we are probably 3 football fields away from where we found that other patch. Now, I don't see any berries on this one, but if I start digging under the grass, I bet we can. Let's kind of leave it with that for today. I appreciate you all out there. This is lesson number 2 in how to get good at spotting your wild edibles and your medicinal plants. Lesson number 1, which I will link again in the end card, was abundance exists at the edges. Lesson number 2, look for the anomaly. All right. That's it for today. Please remember to drop a like if you haven't already done so. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. I'd love to have you come back. Keep planting your seeds. Keep stacking your silver. This is Prepping with Sarge.